Well, so today topic is from that YouTube comment. Okay, so few juniors were reaching out to me related to page list. Okay, that how we can, like, page list basically repeating grid. Okay, that how we can take the repeating grid as an input. Okay, so in one of my videos, I didn't remember previously, I have showed that how we can populate the data using data page on in repeating grid. Okay, but what today we'll be learning is that how we can take the input, okay, from the users. Okay, and then also one important thing is that how we can put the validations on that one. Okay, because that is also important. They were asking me that how we can put the validations. Okay, so let's learn it, because usually like how to put validations on a single valued attribute. Okay, but this page list, if you are a beginner, and this today's topic is for the beginner. Okay, the people who are like learning CSA, or they are very new to Pega. Okay, if you are experienced, then definitely you must be knowing this one. So let's start. It won't take much time. It will take maximum 10 to 15 minutes. So I'll do it from the scratch. Okay, we'll configure the UI also. We'll learn how to configure the UI, and then we'll write the validations rule. Okay, so for that I have just created a basics. Okay, the basic structures what I have created is just a sample applications and one sample case type. Okay, and this is the things you can see that. Okay, so here, like, and the case type is to apply the expense report. Okay, so whenever, like, everyone have gone through this one. If you're new, maybe you haven't applied any expense report. Okay, but once you're like writing your CSA exam, definitely you'll go and apply for expense report in your organization. So how we usually do is, okay, that we get a systems where we have to fill the expense details, like expense date, expense type, expense amount, and expense note. Like, that's not a mandatory. Okay, so what we'll doing, we'll be trying to replicate this only, this repeating record. This is the table, okay, in the Pega. So we'll first configure this UI, and also we'll try to take the value. Okay, so we'll see how we can take the value. So let's start that. Okay, so as I mentioned, that I have created a one case type, expense report. So just submit expense and then approve expense. Okay, just simple things. As of now, I have not created any UI. Okay, so let's start creating that UI. One more things which I have already created is that, okay, so if you see this Excel sheet, okay, so what kind of a data we need? So we need expense list is a kind of a expense list. Okay, so that means we need one data class. Okay, so we'll be creating one property in work class called expense list, and then we'll be creating these properties in a data class. Okay, so I have already created a data class with this property, but I have not created yet this property. So let's create this property, and this I'll show you that I have already created. So let me show you. So if I go here, you can see that I have already created a data. Okay, and sorry, let me go to data. Yeah, so this is data. One second, let me close this one. Okay, so let me click data and then expense. So you can see that I have already created property. So you can ignore this unique ID, amount, expense date, and then type and note. That is what I showed on that Excel sheet. If I go to class also, here in class explorer, if I click this class, we'll see this property there. So if I come here and just hit data, then we'll see that class. So inside this class, expense class, what we have those attributes. Okay, property, and inside the property, amount, expense date, note, type. Okay, now let's go to work and create expense list property, because as I mentioned here in the Excel sheet, we need these attributes. So these attributes plus this one. So first we need expense list. So expense list we can create in case type class or in work class. So let's for now create in. If you want to have it reusable, then you can create in that work class, or you can create in expense. So let's create in work only. Usually this kind of a property we create in work so that we can reuse it. So here create data model and then property, and we'll say that expense list. Okay, and the type of the property will be list, because you can see that we are going to take in this one, okay, multiple input. Okay, so multiple row will be there. Okay, so I'll select that list. So now you can ask the question that what will be the page definition. So yeah, obviously we have created a data class for this one. So we'll just copy that class and paste it here, data, and then expense. Let's save it. Okay, now let's go back to the work again and see that. Okay, so we'll see that attribute here that it's got created. Oh, it got created in expense only. So I'll just delete, I'll say not required, and I'll save as in work class expense list. It all depends. Like if you think that okay, no, this property cannot be used anywhere, then you can create in expense, else you can create in work. Okay, as I mentioned that most of the time this kind of property we create in work so that we can reuse. Now let's refresh this one. We'll see that. So in data model, we got a data model in property. So you can see that when I'll expand this one, this is referring to those same attributes. Okay, so now our property is ready. We'll create a flexions sections. Okay, so if you're using theme Cosmos or UI kit, okay, and if you're not using the React one, okay, because React one is still very early. Okay, so I'm hoping that you are learning with that traditional Cosmos theme. So now we'll go ahead and create that UI. So we can configure it from here as well. Okay, but we'll learn it how we can create a manually. So if I go here, we can quickly configure that. Okay, and then we can do it, but let's learn it manually. So I have this flow. Let me open this flow. Now what I'll do here, I have to refer a flow action. So as of now that flow actions is not there, so I'll create it. So to configure any view or to configure any UI, what component we need is that flow actions. Okay, so we are going to create flow actions manually here. If I use configure view, then configure view system will automatically create. So I'll just create manually. So expense, submit expense, I'll create. Submit expense is that kind of the first UI where we'll fill the data. Okay, so the flow actions I'm creating. Now in flow actions we have to give a sections. Okay, so let's give that sections and create that one as well. So submit expense. So fine, we created that. Okay, now first we'll save that section so that we can refer that same sections in flow actions. So now our sections is ready, flow actions is ready. Let's save the flow, because our flow actions is also ready. So now we can save it, there is no issue. Now done. So if I'll create a case now, okay, it won't say anything, okay, on the UI, because it will be blank, because we haven't added any component, okay, on that UI. So you can see that. Just wait for that case to be created. Yeah, so you can see that UI is blank, nothing is there. Now what we'll do in this sections, okay, now we have to add a repeating grid so that we can take that input. Okay, so we'll go to data display, and so to take that input, still like this is a template version. Okay, so you have to go to full section editor to configure that dynamic list, okay, or any repeating grid or anything. To do that we have to convert to full section editor. It won't come in that template one. So I'll convert this one to full sections editor. Now I'll get an options to configure that. So in structures I'll select table, okay, because this is what we want. Okay, we have few other options also. We can learn it that how we want to use it. This one, repeating dynamic layout or repeating dynamic layout especially. So let's in this one what we have to give, we can give a separate, configure a separate sections, but in a table we don't need it separate sections. We can configure that and there only. So let's try table only today. Okay, so I have just dropped a table. Okay, now I have dropped the table. So if you see, we have to take that input. Okay, so from this one, okay, so this where it will go on the expense list only. Okay, because the main property or the main attribute is expense list. Okay, and this is that like expense list 1. Okay, so I can configure in terms of Pega, I can configure that this is list 1. Sorry. So this is the PX list, PX result 1 of expense list. Okay, it's not coming. So this is, I can configure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there are like 6 expense list. Okay, so this is the way we have to configure. So first we have to configure that like the source. Okay, where we want to take this input. So the input will be expense list. Okay, so we'll just click on the table, and here it is asking, okay, what will be your source. Okay, so definitely we have created database. Mostly we use for display. Okay, if you're using any table database, then you can use for taking that input as well. But if you're using report definitions, we don't usually use for taking the input, but yeah, we can do that, that's not a problem. But here we are going to use property, and we have already created expense list. So now I have selected. Okay, after this one, and this is that like display grid header and footer, so we don't need footer, but header we need it. Okay, the reason is that add and delete or leave it. Okay, for now let it be there, we'll see how it will look on the UI. So I'll keep that display grid header and display grid footer. Paginations, if you're selecting, like if we don't select, then Pega will choose one. Okay, because let's say we are giving a page size. Okay, so paginations we should select. Okay, if we are like trying to display the results, and that result can be more than 10 or 20. Okay, but like usually if you're entering that value, then we won't enter much. Okay, like 10 maximum will enter 10 or 5. Okay, so in that case pagination is not required. But if you're like entering, if you're going to enter 20 or 30, then definitely required. Okay, so pagination mostly we use for display purpose. While entering, I don't think it is required, no one is going to enter that much, but yeah, we can select that, let's say 10, so that is fine. Okay, but if you're selecting pagination, sometimes what happens, people will select paginations and they will disable this one in case of display the data. Here we're trying to take the input, but I'm just telling you that if you're disabling this one, display grid header, unchecking that one, and even if you select paginations, then it won't show. Okay, let's say you're trying to display the data and you have selected 10 per page size. Okay, so it won't say, paginations will not work, so you have to check that checkbox. But here we are using editable, so okay, and that's not a problem. Now the next thing is that, okay, if I'll just do that, let's try that, let's submit it and refresh the case which we have created E2. So we have referred that property. Okay, save and close, I'll just say save and close. I'll open that property, let me launch that portal. In portal we'll see, so I'll go ahead and show you E2. So you can see that no items is there, and we can click add. Okay, but you can see that add or delete, nothing is working. Okay, so if you're a beginner, okay, I'll show you how we have to do. Okay, so you have to follow this configuration. So you can see that I'm simply showing you that whenever I'm clicking add or delete, nothing is happening. Okay, so delete will definitely not happen because we have not added anything, and add is also not working. So let's see why it's not working. The reason is in operations tab of the table. So I'll just click again table, and in operations tab, okay, row editing has been marked as a none. Okay, so then we have to select inline or master details. So if you are saying inline, then we can say click row to edit and row always editable. So for now, okay, so this one, click row to edit, like let's do that. Okay, let's learn one by one all the options. Okay, so let's refresh this case again. Now it will work. I'll show you. Let's do that here. See, and then here to edit we can do that. But before that, why it's not working? Because one more things which we forget. Okay, that after configuring this page list, we need to configure those attributes as well. So let's do that. Here we have to say expense date. So that we missed it. Okay, and here we can say that label for expense date. So see, after referring those page list, we can see we are getting those attribute inside it to refer. So we referred one attribute. Okay, to refer the second one, we have to click this one. So you can see that, okay, add insert column after, or this one is before. So whatever we selected, we can click this one after. So then next one will be, next one we want to say expense date and then amount. So here we can say that expense amount. Okay, and then third one we can say is, and then here we can mention that property also. Which property? X amount. And here we missed one both. This is not mandatory, but yeah, we have already referred amount for. And then last one will select type. So we can say type. And then here we'll say expense. Type. And this is a list which I have already created. Okay, so if you see, like we can keep it free text also, but I have created a list. Okay, and then the value will come from that, sorry, not here, sorry. So this one will be just label only. In that property panel we'll select it. So here we'll say expense expense type, and then here we'll select that property type. Here we have to select drop down. Okay, so you can see that in repeating grid. Okay, if I configure here also in Excel that I want to select from these many values only, that will come in drop down. So similar way we have to do, we can do it here also. So I'll say type and then select a control, so I can say that drop down. Okay, and then value I have already defined. So if I just open this property, I can show you that I have already defined food, transport, accommodation. Okay, just for like POC purpose. Okay, mostly you can display like you can bring this data dynamically. So now this is done. Okay, now again I'll go back, and in this one in operations I'll say row editing none. Okay, again. Now let's go back and refresh this case again. So see, the header is coming, okay, but I cannot add it. Okay, so the reason is again the same thing, that because we have made it a row editable none. Now I'll select inline, and then we have options click row to edit or row always editable. So depending on your use case, you can do that. Okay, so here for now I have selected click row to edit. Okay, so let me see if it will work or not. See, so now we can do that. Okay, so like after adding, it's working. Okay, but we have to click it to edit. We have to click it to edit. Okay, because that is what we can see here, that is what we have configured here. But in this kind of a scenario, we don't want, like, why we will ask users to click. Okay, we can make it row always editable. So let's do that. Okay, row always editable. Now, and here also we can see that, okay, these things is coming read only. So to make that, okay, so property also we have to refer here, which we have forget it, expense date, and then expense amount. Here also we have to refer that amount. So now I think good, we are good. Now let's go and refresh this. So we'll see always editable. So see, I'll add item. So you can see that now we can add a number of items, and then we can delete also. See here. So let's add one. So this is how we can add it. So we'll add that. Okay, let's say I'll add date. Okay, today's date, and expense amount. Let's say I'll give 200 or 200, and then I'll select food. Okay, and then if I submit, then it will get posted to clipboard. Okay, so instead of submitting, what I'll do, I'll just save it and then show you in the clipboard how it will look. So we have added one entry. So let's see that. Let's review the clipboard page of this one. So clipboard page is opening, so just wait for that. Let's navigate to POI work page. Inside POI work page, we can see expense list, and in expense list we have one entry. So see, the whatever the value we have entered, so type food, and then create operator Pega have added automatically few, but amount is there, whatever our attribute, that is there, amount is there, expense date is there, and then type is there. So we got it. Okay, if I add one more, I'll click add one more. Let's say I'll add 20's date, expense amount, and then 400. Okay, and then this one I'll say transport. I will save it. Okay, and refresh this clipboard again. So we'll get two entry. So this is how this page list gets appended. Okay, so whenever we add any entry, see, we got second item also, and this is time transport. So now you understood it, that how we can configure a page list to take the input from the users. Okay, to display that, okay, we don't have to select anything in operations. Okay, we don't have to select anything operations. You can just keep it none if you're just displaying. But if you're like displaying and then if you want to edit, then you have to do it. Here one more option is master details. So in case of master details, if you want to edit, then the pop-up will come. Okay, like we can configure how we want to configure that one. Okay, so to see that master details, we have to configure more sections, or like a flow action. So here we can give a flow actions like expand, collapse if you want to use, or some other things. See here we have an options expand, collapse. So if I give expand, collapse, then I have to configure a flow actions, and in that flow actions we can do that it. Okay, so to learn this more UI, where you can refer is, you have to navigate it to configure and then user interface and gallery. So if you go to UI elements, there you can see like multiple types of repeating grid. Okay, where you can learn that. Okay, so where you have to navigate, let me show you again, system, and then you have to come to configure user interface, gallery, and then UI element. So here you can see that all layouts is there, so row list based. So you can see that in tables, so if whatever you want to learn, you can do it from the row list based layout. So I'll just click on tables and I'll show you. So we have many types of table. Okay, so see here, we are unable to edit, okay, row editing. So from here we can click that. So see here we can edit that row on click. Okay, expand dialog, so expand mode is also there. Okay, and then overlay. So there are many types of there. Model dialogs is also there. So whatever way you want, you can do it. Okay, so you can learn it from there. So for now we have configured, okay, inline only, but row is always editable. Okay, now delete will also work. So if I'll select any, delete will work, and then if I save it or just submit it, then it will go away from that. See that expense list is gone. So if I'll just go and show the clipboard again, we'll find one entry only. In the second one is nothing, okay, because we did something like that is where it's coming, but it's nothing. Okay, it will get removed. If I'll just delete this one also, then we'll not find anything. Now let's have one more thing, that if you want to put a validations, okay, how we can do it. So the one way is that we can put a validation is the client side. So you can go and watch the video. We have the validations, okay, a separate class is validations. In that one I have explained client side validations, server side validations. So in this one, let's say we want to have a kind of a combinations of validations, server side and client side. So let's say we can say that expense date should be always be the past date. Okay, it cannot be the future date. Okay, so that we can configure in property only. So we can open that property. So from here, live UI. So this is also live UI also learn. Okay, for this comes under like kind of a debugging. Okay, so if you're new, let's learn that well. So learn that as well. So you have to click on gear icon, then click this one, and then from here we can open that attribute or property. So what we'll do, I'll open that one from here. So from this one you can open that rule in Dev Studio. Now we open that rule, and from here we can open that property. So let's open the property and check that if we have any. So where we can configure the client side validation property if you want. So then we have to come in advanced tab, and in advanced tab use validate is there. So we can say that is future date or is future date, is future date or is past date. Is past date, we have to check is past date. Let's see if we have or not. Is future date, we have only is future date. Is valid date. Okay, so from here we are unable to find it. So what we can do, we can go to that complete list also. So to do that, where we can go, we have to go to records. Let me show you. If you want to see that complete list and from there we want to search, so we can go to records, data model, and then here we'll find edit validate. So that we call edit validate. So let's see here, I'll just search with the past. So in edit validate rule, I'll just search with past. PY is past date. So let's try and see how it is working. Check if a date or time is before now. Okay, so because obviously we don't want to apply for expense report for future. I mean, we can do that. Okay, sometimes we do that as well. Okay, but I'm just like trying to make you learn, because what happens when we are booking for a trip, okay, just after just booking the trip we can go for expense report, but usually we don't do, because like at last moment also trip can be cancelled. Okay, so that is where we usually don't do. We usually try for expense report once that trip or like that the work is done. Okay, so now in that property I'll try to refer that one. So I'll go expense date and say PY is past date. Okay, now let's go back and try to give it future date, and let's see if you're getting any validations message. So I'll just, here one entry is there, so today is 21, I'll just give 24 and try to save it. See, I'm getting a message. Okay, invalid value is specified for expense date, value doesn't adhere to the value validate. Okay, so that is fine. So we learned that. Now the next one is that server side validation. So the one questions came to me that how we can validate the server side. Okay, so let's learn how we can validate the server side. on page list. Okay, so to do that, first what will we have to do, we have to create a validate rule. Okay, so and where we can configure the validate rule, so the validate rule we have to configure in flow action. So we have this flow actions. Let's go to validate validations tab and create a validate rule. So I can say validate submit ex. So let's create a first validate rule and then we'll learn. So we'll create that validate rule and refer that validate rule in flow action. So if you're a beginner, okay, you have to understand that where we can refer that validate rule, and if you want to just learn that entire validations, I'll attach that link in the video in the comment in the description sections of that validations. Okay, so learn that validations also. So for now I'll just save it, and then I have created. So most of the times what happens, we create the rule but we forget to save that the parent rule. Okay, so if you miss, then that will not work. So here also, from here I created an ID nice, now I saved it. Now I'll close these things. Now let's form a requirement. Okay, that if we are selecting, so we can say that, okay, if we are selecting food type, okay, or say that expense amount, okay, for each row cannot be more than 1000. Okay, so what, for each line, okay, the value should be less than 1000 only. So that we want to set up. Okay, so if I'll just enter 200, then we should not see any validations. But if I enter more than 1000, okay, let's say 1100, then we want to configure the validations for each row. Okay, so let's see how we can do that. So in this validate rule, what we have to do, so this you can see that I have created this validations expense, okay, class. Okay, so that means here only we can only get property, and this list is coming from the expense list. Okay, so we have to select expense list. Now on this one we can configure that. Okay, so the moment expense list, so you can see that call for each, so it's like a loop, it will loop and then try to validate for each attribute. So here, okay, what we can do, okay, now to one second. So here if you want to do that expense list, and then here we can select expense date, sorry, or amount. Okay, so see here what will happen. Okay, we can write it like this. Okay, so this is where the problem is happening for the beginners. Okay, let me refresh and show you again. So if I refer, now I have to refer. Okay, if I have to just validate py label, so I can go ahead and select from the bottom. Okay, py label, let's say I have a property py label, I can do it, I can add the validations. If I click, I'm getting an options, but if I'm adding this one, then I'm not getting an options. See, I'm just getting an options to call another validate rule. So that also will learn. But if you want to validate it here only, okay, without creating any other validations rule, how you can do that? So you can just write that, even though if you're not getting, you can just write it like this, amount, and then click on this one, and then we can configure that first. So we have a number, let's say that we can select amount. So now you can see that, okay, these properties we are getting from the expense list. Okay, so here we can say that because expense list we have configured, so we are getting from that data class. So amount is less than or equal to, greater than, is greater than thousands, then show validations message. Okay, let's say we'll say amount is not valid. So let's see if it is working or not. Submit it. Now let's try here, come back, we'll refresh our screen. Let's see that. So here I'll enter 1200. So that validations, okay, so this we have configured server side validation. So now I have to submit it to fire that validation. So let me submit that. So see, amount is valid, that validations message I'm getting. So you can see that I have not configured any other validations like a separate validations rule, but after that, but without that also I'm able to configure that the validations logic. Okay, but if you're a beginner, you won't understand, because how I was knowing that yes, I can write that property manually. I wrote it like this. Okay, because I'm not getting that in options. But if you remove that one, so what you want to do, okay, if you want to configure it here only, then just remove those braces and then you'll get those property. And then again, eventually you have to apply those braces as well. So once you'll write down the property, because it was not, because of those braces property was not coming the drop down. So if you want to do it here only, first you remove the braces, select the property, and then again add it back. Now the second approach is, okay, so usually the first approach what I explained, we should not try to use it, okay, because the first of all it will be confusing, okay, and like it won't be much like what should I say, if you have only one attribute then we can do it, but if you have multiple attribute you should try to create a separate validate rule. So how we'll do it, okay, so here you can see that the moment I'm selecting expense list, and now if I click add, the system is asking me to create another validate rule. So we can create another validate rule. So we can say submit expense in something like that, okay, you can say that validate, you can give the same name as well, that's not a problem, submit expense, okay. And this time if you see that first time we have created in work class, now this the class of this expense list, the definitions class of expense list is data expense, so then it will create in data side. So you can see that the moment I clicked it from there, it's creating in data expense. So let's create it. Now this time we are in that same class, so we don't have to add like any property, so we are getting those attributes whatever we are looking. So see here we are directly getting those attributes. So now I'll put that same validate rule here. So now I'll say in the drop down, okay, I'll say that I'll compare two numbers, amount, and then greater than I'll select 1000, and I say amount is not valid and submit it. Now I'll go to the main validations rule, I'll save this one and then remove the existing one. So the benefit is here each time you don't have to refer that much. Now simply if you are creating like this, okay, so any validations rule, if we want to, let's say tomorrow some validations rule is like requirement is coming to change the validations rule, so you don't have to modify into the parent rule, you can simply go and add more validations rule to the child. So let's say you have already added amount and then you are getting requirement on expense date. If you are getting a requirement on type, then you can simply select here, you don't have to bother about that page list and you can keep adding. So that is where the best practices is to create, like refer once that property, create a separate validate rule in data classes, and then just refer in the parent class, okay. So the parent we don't have to touch the parent each time, so whenever the new requirement is coming. Now let's test it if it is working or not, okay. So I'll cancel again this one, save and close, let's do that. And so here we have already 1200, so let's save it. Oh, it didn't work, why? Let's see that. Sorry, I think I had not submitted it. So see, when I'm submitting, I'm getting that validations message 1200. If I'll just give 1000 and try to submit it, then it will go ahead. So you can see that now I'm getting the another screen. So if I go and see the page list, see here. So this is how we can do it, okay. One more things you can try and let me know if you are not able to do it. I'll show you that how you can. So let's say here I'm adding, okay, so 400. So this will be your like kind of a exercise, okay. You should try and comment, let me know in comment section, so then I can help you. So let's say that your requirement is that the total expense amount you want to display in the footer, okay. So I'll again add, so here some date 15, and then I'll select accommodation 300. So what you have to do, what you have to try in your POC, that you have to calculate this amount and show me in that footer, okay. So you can see in the Excel sheet, I can, like here I can say that total, let's say I'll say total amount. So the total amount you have to sum it. So here it's coming how much, 280. So that you have to display in the footer. Okay, and how you can display. So let's try. You try it and let me know if you are unable to do it. I'll show you how we can do it. I'll just give a hint that you should try to use declare expressions here on the page list. Declare expressions will help you to calculate this automatically. Okay, and in the footer, okay, if I show you that section, so in the footer here you can show that. So you see this area is there. So right, so then you can create you can try to show that in the footer. So try it and let me know. If it will not work, I'll help you. So that's it for today's sessions. We learned how we can configure a page list and then take that input from the users, and also we learned that on a page list how we can apply the validations rule. We saw both. Okay, client side there is no change, you have to just apply in the property, and for the server side we saw both methods, that we can directly refer that in the parent only using after like having the braces and then the property. In that way we can do it configure, but the best way is create a separate, like here we have done it. Okay, separate validate rule in data class and add all the validations in data class. Okay, instead of having the work class. Okay, so that's it for today's sessions. Okay, so try it and let me know. So thank you very much. Have a good day.